Hi friends, today we will discuss about the oogenesis. This topic is for UG and PG. So let us discuss about the oogenesis. What is oogenesis? Oo means ovum, genesis means formation, as you know. That this is the process of formation of egg or ovum, and this process leads us, or we can say give us, a developmentally competent egg, and that egg on fertilization can generate a live offspring. So such a kind of process is known as a oogenesis, and this process is a little bit protracted, and it is more complicated than the spermatogenesis, because you see that during the development, or during the development of a ovum, this process sometimes it stops, and then it again restarts. So because of that, it becomes a kind of a complicated and protracted process. So let us see oogenesis. Now, where this oogenesis occurs, the occurrence of oogenesis is in the ovary. You can see here the pair of ovaries. These are the gonads, female gonads. They are present on either side of the uterus. Uterus is situated just below the belly button, and on the either side of the uterus, these two ovaries are present. These two ovaries are attached with the fundus region of the uterus with the ligaments, and these ovaries are harboring the primordial germ cells which are responsible for the oogenesis. So this is what the position of a ovary in a woman's body. Now see the structure of ovary. You can see here the ovary is lined by the surface of the ovary is lined by the cuboidal epithelial cells. The inner to this, the connective tissue, dense connective tissue is there, which is divided into two regions. The peripheral region is called as a cortex, and the inner region is called as a medulla. Medulla region is having a blood supply, so that whatever the nutrition that is given to the ovary, and whatever the carbon dioxide and ammonia that is transported via the veins to the blood vascular system. So this is how that this is the structure of a ovary. Now we will see the significance of oogenesis. Oogenesis is a very important process in which there is a halving of chromosome number of gamete that takes place, because we know that meiosis is there, and in a meiosis the reduction of a chromosome number that takes place, and because of this, whatever the zygote is formed, that maintains its 2n number of chromosomes, because the n number of chromosomes are contributed by the spermatozoa, and n number of chromosomes are contributed by the ovum. So this is how that sperm and ovum fuses with each other and forms a zygote, and this zygote has a diploid nature. Another important, we can say, the significance of this oogenesis is that it gives a kind of a good start to the developing zygote, because the sperm doesn't have any kind of a nutrition, but in case of a oogenesis, whatever the ovum that is formed, that ovum is having a yolk. In most of the animals, the yolk is responsible for providing nutrition to the developing embryo. So this is the another significance of oogenesis, Then the most important significance of oogenesis is that during meiosis, a crossing over takes place and the exchange of genetic material that takes place, and because of that, whatever the gamete that is formed, that is genetically different from its parent, and it has a certain new kind of variations, and we know that variations have a very important adaptive value in evolution. So this is the significance of oogenesis. See, now we will discuss about the overall process of oogenesis. Although this process of oogenesis is a continuous process, but for our convenience, we have divided it into three phases. That is phase of multiplication, phase of growth, and phase of maturation. Another peculiar feature of oogenesis is it is a protracted. I have told you that it is a protracted process, and at some point of a time, it stops. So, with this, we will start with a phase of multiplication. The cell which undergoes phase of multiplication is called as a oogonial mother cell, and this oogonial mother cell is derived from a primordial germ cell. Now, this oogonial mother cell, when it enters into a phase of multiplication, it divides and redivides by simple mitosis, and about 5 to 6 million oogonial mother cells are formed during this phase of multiplication. After that, the oogonial mother cell enters into a phase of growth where it accumulates the nutrients from the surrounding medium in a ovary, and it increases in size. So this is known as a primary oocyte. So this is known as a phase of growth. After that, this primary oocyte enters into a first meiotic cell division. As soon as it enters into a first meiotic cell division at the prophase 1 diplotin stage, this primary oocyte growth or development stops. So this is known as arresting of the primary oocyte at a first meiotic cell division. Then when the primary oocyte ovulates, just before ovulation, it completes its first meiotic cell division and give rise to a secondary oocyte that is known as the secondary oocyte and first polar body. Now, this secondary oocyte, after fertilization, that means this secondary oocyte ovulated, and when it comes into the uterus and fertilizes with the sperm, at that particular point the second meiotic cell division takes place, and the egg cell is formed along with the polar body. So this is how this particular, from first meiotic cell division to a complete formation of a egg cell, this phase is known as a phase of maturation. It is a little bit extended due to the stop signals at a particular period. So this is known as a phase of maturation. So this is a overall bird's eye view on the process of oogenesis. Now, for a detail, we will start with the detail from the primordial germ cells. See, now we will discuss about the primordial germ cells. What are the primordial germ cells? Primordial germ cells or PGCs, they are the cells or group of cells that are reserved for formation of the sperm and egg. Now, in case of a female gonad, these primordial germ cells are reserved for formation of egg, and these are named as primordial germ cells. These primordial germ cells, how they originate? This is known as epiblast of the human embryo, and from this epiblast, these primordial germ cells, they migrate towards the genital ridge. And what is the genital ridge? Genital ridge means the group of cells that are forming the gonads, or we can say the precursors of the gonads. So these primordial germ cells migrate from this particular region into the genital reach, and they line the future gonads. So these primordial germ cells are mesodermal in origin. Even the genital reach is also a mesodermal in origin. So this is how that these primordial germ cells originate, and they maintain their we can say pluripotency and suppress the changes in them occurring in other somatic cells. So they preserve their we can say the pluripotency in a genital reach. And all this happens during the third week of the gestation, you can say that. Now, in an embryonic stage, that is in a third to fifth week, the primordial germ cells, they migrate to the genital reach and they occupy the positions in a genital reach. Genital reach is a precursor of gonads. That means from this genital reach, the future gonads are going to form. So the primordial germ cells here, they differentiates into oogonial mother cells. Now, these oogonial mother cells are, or they undergo mitotic division, the repeated mitotic divisions, and they form about 5 to 6 million oogonial mother cells. And this happens during the 6th to 8th week of gestation inside the embryo. So all this is happening inside the embryo, and here when these oogonial mother cells proliferate, the karyokinesis takes place, but cytokinesis is incomplete, and because of that, the oogonial mother cells, which have divided due to the mitosis, they form a small clusters, and these clusters, because of the lack of cytokinesis, they are attached with each other by a cytoplasmic bridge, and they form a cluster or a nest, and this is known as the nest of the oogonial mother cells. And this mitosis extends up to the 20th week of the uh, gestation, or we can say the 20th week of the embryo. Now, see, the oogonial mother cells divide and redivide in such a pace that the karyokinesis takes place, but the cytokinesis cannot. So, the cytoplasm of these newly derived oogonial mother cells remain attached with each other by the cytoplasmic bridge, and because of this, it forms clusters of oogonial mother cells, and these clusters are known as germ cell clusters. Now, these germ cell clusters are surrounded by a pregranulosa cells, and because of that, this particular each cluster is appears like a nest. So it is called as a nest of germ cell clusters. Sorry, the germ cells, and this happens during the 5th to 20th week of the gestation, and after that, that means during the 70th to 20th weeks of gestation, these germ cell clusters, they begins to break down. Now we will see what happens during the breakdown. You can see here the when germ cell clusters break down, uh, this is due to two reasons. First reason is that some of the uh, oogonial mother cells which do not develop properly, they are degenerated. The mechanism that is called as apoptosis, that is initiated in them, and because of that, these germ cells degenerate. But those cells which are healthy, such a kind of a primordial germ cells, they get surrounded by the pregranulosa cells. So now each primordial germ cell is surrounded by the pregranulosa cells. Now, why this most of the cells they get degenerate? That is because it is a kind of a quality control mechanism in a cell, that this quality control mechanism ensures that only healthy individuals, healthy cells, healthy primordial germ cells will remain for the formation or to go through the development to form the egg. So this is how that the defective and malformed nuclei from the um, this pool of these primordial germ cells, they are removed from the pool. So out of the 5 to 6 million primordial germ cells, or we can say oogonial mother cells, these only couple of million remains in the ovary. So this is how it happens. Then these pregranulosa cells, they starts to encircle around the oocyte. So I have told you that this process is there, that these particular pregranulosa cells, these are the somatic cells of the ovary. They surrounds the each and every primordial germ cell. Now this is known as a primordial follicle. Now, these primordial germ cells, they undergo growth phase and they enters into a meiosis 1. Now, when they enters into a meiosis 1, as soon as they enters into a meiosis 1, the maturation phase starts, and this is arrested at a particular time, that is at the depleting stage of a meiosis 1. Now, it has been found that these temporary arrest of the primordial germ cells is due to a factor or a protein that is secreted by the granulosa cells, pregranulosa cells, and that is called as a oocyte maturation inhibitor, OMI. Now, what is the role of this OMI? This role of OMI is that it halts the development of or a maturation of the primary oocyte. And it has been found that this OMI is a very small protein of only 500 Dalton, and it is not specific for species specific, and it is it has a reversible reaction. So this is proved by the various scientists that the defolliculated oocytes, primary oocyte, they do not undergo any kind of arrest, and they simply go through the meiotic division. So that means these pregranulosa cells, they are secreting the oocyte maturation inhibitor, and they halts the development of these primary oocyte. Now, at this particular point of a time, about 1 million primary oocytes are available. Now, the now this primary oocyte, again these primary oocyte, they start to produce a particular kind of we can say the factors, and they stimulates the development of a pregranulosa cells also. So this is known as a transition from primordial follicles to the primary follicles. Now what happens in a primordial follicles? These primordial follicles, they are surrounded by the round squamous epithelial cells, or these are known as the pregranulosa cells. These pregranulosa cells, they differentiates into cuboidal granulosa cells. Now, this stimulus is given by the primary oocytes to the pregranulosa cells, and because of that, these pregranulosa cells becomes cuboidal granulosa cells, and now they are called as the primary follicles. So remember that there is a difference between the primordial follicle and the primary follicle. Primordial follicles are surrounded by the flattened squamous epithelial cells, These are the pregranulosa cells, and primary follicles, they are, we can say, surrounded by the cuboidal granulosa cells. So this is known as the primordial follicle activation. So the pregranulosa cells surrounding the primary oocytes differentiates into cuboidal cells, and they are called as the primary follicles. See, this primordial follicle is converted into a primary follicle. This is known as the activation of a primordial follicle, and this is mediated by a kind of factor that is known as a growth differentiation factor. And this growth differentiating factor is secreted by primary oocyte. This primary oocyte secretes this GDF9 and stimulates the granulosa cells, which are squamous granulosa cells, flattened granulosa cells, to convert into cuboidal granulosa cells. So this is how, when this primordial follicle is converted into primary follicle, the peculiar nature of the granulosa cells is that these granulosa cells are now cuboidal granulosa cells, and they surround the primary oocytes, and that's why it is called as a primary follicle. So uh, you can see here the communication in between uh, the primary oocyte and granulosa cells that goes on when the granulosa cells, by stimulate constant stimulation by the follicle stimulating hormone and the primary oocyte, these granulosa cells increases in number, and now they are 2 to 3 layered structures around the primary oocyte. At the same time, these two granulosa cells and the primary oocyte, they secrete a kind of a layer in between them. That layer is known as the zona pellucida, which is made up of a non-cellular glycoproteinaceous material. So even if this zona pellucida is developed in between the primary oocyte and the granulosa cells, but still these cells can communicate with each other with the help of a cytoplasmic bridge, and this cytoplasmic bridge is helpful in exchange of material in between the granulosa cells and the primary oocyte. See, at the time of birth, the about 1 million primordial follicles are present, and this is known as a pool of primordial follicles or a reservoir of primordial follicles. Now this reservoir of primordial follicles contains primordial follicles, primary follicles, some pre-antral and early antral stage follicles. Now by the time this fetus reaches up to the puberty, only 40,000 primordial follicles remain in this pool. And during each reproductive cycle also, that is menstrual cycle also, about 10 to 15 primordial follicles are selected for the development, but only one reaches up to the ovulation stage, other becomes degenerate or they become atretic. So adult woman of her reproductive age of 32 years, she can produce only 416 ova. This is in sharp contrast with the human male producing spermatozoa. The human male can produce spermatozoa during its whole reproductive life. So this is the uh, in a sharp contrast with the spermatogenesis and the oogenesis. Another peculiar feature in case of human female is that whatever the primordial follicles that are present in the ovary, all these primordial follicles have a primary oocyte in its um, arrested condition, that is the meiosis 1 prophase 1 diplotin stage. Now, as the woman ages, the chances of producing healthy baby decreases because the 40, for example, a woman of 40 years will have a primordial follicle of 40 years. So it becomes, or these women are these primordial follicles become prone to the different kinds of teratogenic agents, toxic drugs, or it may be during the development also the malformation that can take place, and the chances of producing the healthy baby that decreases after age of 40. So this is the irony in case of a human female. Now, at the time of a puberty, in case of a female, hypothalamus starts to produce a gonadotropin releasing hormone. This gonadotropin releasing hormone is responsible for stimulating anterior pituitary to produce follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Now, the luteinizing hormone acts upon the theca cells. Theca means a sheath. So these theca cells are formed around the granulosa cells and forms a sheath-like structure. These theca cells are responsible for converting cholesterol into androgen or androstenedione under the influence of a luteinizing hormone. So these theca cells, they produce androgen, and this androgen is then transported to the granulosa cells. Now, follicle stimulating hormone at the same time it stimulates the granulosa cells, and these granulosa cells convert this androgen which is transported by the theca cells. These they convert this androgen to the estrogen, and this is how the level of estrogen begins to rise, and this estrogen is responsible for the secondary sexual characters, and it is also responsible for development of endometrial lining every month. So this happens in a ovary and in a female body after 13 years of age. Similarly, these hormones also stimulate antral follicles to develop further up to ovulation. As I have told you that this is how that the theca cells and granulosa cells, they are responsible for formation of estrogen, the luteinizing hormone that stimulates the endocrine theca cells to convert cholesterol into androgen. Then this androgen is transported to the granulosa cells. In a granulosa cells, this androgen is converted into estrogen under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone, and this conversion of androgen into estrogen is brought about by the aromatase enzyme that is present in the granulosa cells. Now, this is a secondary follicle. This develops from a primary follicle. In case of a primary follicle, only single layer of granulosa cells is there. But in a secondary follicle, the granulosa cells that are present outside the zona pellucida, they proliferate, and because of the proliferation, 3 or 4 layers of these granulosa cells are formed around the primary oocyte. Now, in between the primary oocyte and granulosa cells, there is a layer that is known as the zona pellucida, which is secreted in a primary follicle, and this layer is secreted by the primary oocyte as well as by the granulosa cells, and that we have seen in a last slide. So These granulosa cells are 3 to 4 layer in a secondary follicle. Outside these granulosa cells, a basal membrane is there on which these granulosa cells rest. Then outer to this basal lamina, theca layer is there. This theca layer, theca means what? Theca means a kind of a sheath or a cover. So these are forming a cover around this follicle. So these theca layer cells are made up of two types of cells, that is endocrine theca cells and the fibroblast cells. In last slide, we have seen that these endocrine theca cells are responsible for the conversion of a cholesterol into androgen or androstenedione and transportation of these androgens to the granulosa cells. So these are the endocrine theca cells. Then fibroblast cells that are present in the theca layer, that are the kind of connective tissue layer, and they have a very little ability to contract, and they helps during the expulsion of a ovum that we will see in a Graafian follicle. Then apart from these cells, this theca layer is vascularized also. It is supplied with the blood vessel so that it can carry hormones to the follicle. So this is all about the secondary follicle. Now after the secondary follicle stage, the next stage is antral or pre-ovulatory follicle. This pre-ovulatory follicle is characterized by presence of a cavity that is known as an antrum. This antrum is filled with the fluid that is known as a follicular fluid and is secreted by the granulosa cells that lining the cavity. Now, because of the appearance of this antrum, the oocyte moves from the central position to the periphery of the follicle, and now it is surrounded by a group of granulosa cells. The granulosa cells which are present in between the oocyte and antrum, they are called as cumulus oophorus, and the cells, granulosa cells that are lining the antral cavity, these are called as a stratum granulosum or a zona granulosa, or in some cases, the cells which lining the antral cavity, they are called as mural granulosa cells. Now, these mural granulosa cells are a kind of secretory cells, and these are responding to the hormone that is a luteinizing hormone. Now, outer to this granulosa cells, basement membrane is there or a basal lamina is there. Outside this basal lamina, the thecal cells are there. Now, theca or thecal cells, now they are forming two layers. The outermost layer is called as a theca externa, and the innermost layer is called as a theca interna. The theca externa is made up of connective tissue cells. These are known as fibroblast cells, and these fibroblast cells are responsible for contraction of this follicle during the ovulation. The inner theca layer, that is known as a theca interna, is made up of secretory cells, and these secretory cells are responsible for a secretion, or we can say a formation of a precursor molecule for the estrogen hormone, as we have seen in the last slide. Along with this thecal interna cells, the blood vessels are also present in the internal theca cells or internal theca layer. So this is all about the antral or pre-ovulatory follicle. Now, when this follicle again develops further, the cells around the zona pellucida, they are demarked by or they differentiates into a kind of spatial cells, or they are already present there. These are known as a corona radiata cells, and they form a, why they are called as a corona radiata. That is because they are like a they are like a crown on the ovum, so that's why the name is given as a corona radiata. And these cells are formed, these cells are attached with the zona pellucida, and these cells are responsible for exchange of material in between the this primary oocyte and the granulosa cells. So the other structure, that is the new structure here that appears in between the primary oocyte and zona pellucida, that is known as a perivitelline space, and this perivitelline space is filled with the perivitelline fluid. So this is all about the Graafian follicle. Now say this is how that after Graafian follicle ruptures, the ovum comes out. The ovum comes out along with certain kinds of cells. These cells are called as a corona radiata cells, which are still attached to the zona pellucida, and thus this particular egg cell is called as a secondary oocyte. That is because this just before ovulation, the meiosis one completes, and because of that, now it is a secondary oocyte. So whenever there is a ovulation, that means the ovum is now secondary oocyte, and in between the zona pellucida and the secondary oocyte, this perivitelline space is there. So this is the structure of ovum when it comes out of the Graafian follicle. Now, what happens in a Graafian follicle? The first thing that happens is a rupture of this basal lamina, and because of that only this particular ovum comes out. The granulosa cells that now becomes a lutein cells, they acquire a kind of a yellow color structure, and they starts, or they contribute towards formation of a corpus luteum. Now outside this corpus luteum or lutein cells, the endocrine theca cells are there, fibroblast cells are also there, blood capillaries are also there. Even some, because of the rupture of this basal lamina, the immune cells that enters inside the follicle. So now it becomes a corpus luteum. Now it has a very important role if this particular ovum gets fertilized. Now if it is fertilized, then this uh, corpus luteum is responsible for formation of or a synthesis of a hormone that is known as a progesterone, and now it becomes a corpus luteum of a pregnancy. Now, if the fertilization does not take place, then this corpus luteum converts into a corpus albicans, and then it degenerates. So, in each cycle, this kind of structural changes that occurs in a corpus luteum. So, this is how that after ovulation, the ovum is formed. This ovum is called as a secondary oocyte. That is, it just completed the meiosis first, and first polar body is released along with the release of this secondary oocyte. Now, along with this secondary oocyte, the corona radiata cells are also expelled out of the ovary. So this is known as ovulation. This is how that the oogenesis and folliculogenesis is integrated with each other. So that's why this oogenesis becomes more complicated as compared to the spermatogenesis. Now let us summarize the whole process of oogenesis. And discuss about oogenesis as well as folliculogenesis with the help of this diagram. See, the primordial germ cells, they migrate from the yolk sac. Uh, they are arrange themselves in the linings of the ovary, and these primordial germ cells then get surrounded by pregranulosa cells. When they get surrounded by pregranulosa cells, they start to develop, these primordial germ cells start to develop or enter into the meiosis prophase 1. And when they enter into the meiosis prophase 1, at the stage of a diplotin, maturation, oocyte maturation inhibitor that is secreted by the pregranulosa cells, and these stops the further development of the primary oocyte. And now this is called as a primordial follicle. So this primordial follicle is characterized by the presence of the pregranulosa cells. These are squamous epithelial cells surrounding the primary oocyte. Now, then the further development of one of the follicle that takes place. So for each cycle, during each cycle, 10 to 15 primordial follicles enters into the development or starts the development, and only at the end of the cycle only one ovulate. So other follicles, they degenerate. So let us see only one here. So primordial follicle. This primordial follicle then enters or he starts to proceed towards the development, and it gets activated. So this primordial follicle activation that takes place, the oocytes or primary oocytes, they secrete a kind of a growth differentiating factor 9 or GDF9, which is responsible for converting the squamous granulosa cells into cuboidal granulosa cells. And now this primary oocyte is surrounded by the cuboidal granulosa cells. Now this is known as a primary follicle. And then it again proceeds further, it produces a secondary follicle. During the primary follicle, zona pellucida formation that takes place, and the secondary in a secondary follicle, the granulosa cells around the primary oocyte, they starts to divide and redivide under the influence of this primary oocyte as well as under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone. So these starts to divide and redivide and forms a multi-layered granulosa cells around the primary oocyte. Then after some time, this antrum is developed. This antrum is a kind of a fluid filled cavity. The fluid present in the antrum is called as a follicular fluid. So it is secreted by the granulosa cells, and then this antrum cavity pushes this particular primary oocyte towards the periphery of the follicle, and because of that, the this particular primary oocyte forms a kind of a mound of a cells, and or it is present in the mound of a cells. That's why this is called as a cumulus oophorus, and it becomes the antral cavity increases in size, and now it becomes a Graafian follicle. So this Graafian follicle is now ready to ovulate. So after some time, because of the LH surge and the follicle stimulating hormone increase, the this at the 14th day of um, menstrual cycle, the ovulation takes place. Before ovulation, just before 36 hours of before the ovulation, the meiosis first is completed. So as a in this particular primary follicle, or we can say even it is in a primordial follicle, the primary oocyte is arrested in meiosis 1. Now here, before ovulation, this meiosis 1 is completed, and now it is called as a secondary oocyte, and this secondary oocyte is expelled out of the ovary, and along with the secondary oocyte, some part of the cells, or some cells that comes out of the um, ovary, that is called as a corona radiata cells. Now this particular the remnants of this Graafian follicle, that becomes a corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum, when this ovum gets fertilized, then this corpus luteum becomes the corpus luteum of pregnancy. If this ovum is not fertilized, then this corpus luteum degenerates. It forms a corpus albicans, and this corpus albicans gradually degenerate. So this is how that the development of a follicle and the development of oocyte, that goes simultaneously in a ovary, and that's why it becomes more complicated. So this is the overall summary of ovulation. So friends, thank you very much for a patient hearing. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel Bamboo's Biogenius for latest uploads, and like my videos. If you have any queries, you can write in comment box. So thank you very much for your support.